the NFL is probably one of the best businesses ever for ownership. Growth year over year, amazing. You're in a business that churns $20+ billion a year, and it grows every year, right? And piece of that pie is split among the players and the owners. So understanding that component, I would prefer as a player advocate for a player to get handed the trophy because we're the only ones out there, blood, sweat, and tears in training camp, away from our families during the season, putting really the work in to get that.
Thank you very much for doing the podcast. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.
You're in New York in April. Amazing time for you to be in New York. And you're there because you've, I believe, signed a contract extension for your third year with the Giants, the marquee franchise for the marquee league in the country. But to what extent was your interest in signing with the Giants driven by football considerations versus wanting to do karaoke with Ciara?
I think a lot of it is more, even though karaoke with Ciara probably would have been eventful. Big part of my decision was, just the clarity, the stability. I'm from here. My family's settled here, and it's a great market to be in.
Best city in the world. Mm-hmm. I used to live in New York, and my favorite time to be in New York City is when the Knicks are making a playoff run, which is kind of right about now. Is that the same for you? Because I feel like there's New York's magic anyway, but that magic gets dialed up when the Knicks are doing well.
I think they're directly correlated. Everybody's in a good mood when the Knicks and the Giants and all the teams in the market are doing well. So it's good to be a part of. I'll definitely go to a Knicks game. Is it Thursday or Friday of this week? But I try to go to as many Knicks games as I can.
But it's not the same when the Nets do well, right? Because the Nets they're just too new.
The Nets don't count. Let's be honest. The Nets don't count. It's the Knicks all the way.
Like I've seen people ask Zoran not a gotcha, but trying to see where he take a stance on a controversial topic. Like, oh, Knicks or Nets is not even, you don't have to think about it. It's just easy. It's Knicks all day long.
No, it's Knicks.
So you mentioned you're from New York City. You play for the Giants. So that must feel pretty cool to play for your hometown team. Did you grow up a Giants fan, or was football not really on your radar because you're a basketball guy?
I didn't grow up watching football at all. So I'll honestly be lying to you if I said I was a Giants fan growing up. Didn't really watch football or care about football until I started playing. Obviously know the history of the Giants winning Super Bowl and stuff, but it wasn't on my radar.
So how does that happen then? So you played college ball upstate really well, captained the team, and you made this hard pivot away from the NBA, and that was the path you were on. And you decided to lace up your cleats, put on a helmet and pads. Was there any one thing that led you to make that shift, or was it a slow build?
I always say that I didn't choose football. Football chose me. And it wasn't really until after I graduated college and really had interest from the Buffalo Bills to invite me to a pro day workout. That's when it really came on my radar. That's when I really opened up my mind to the possibility of playing. And it has obviously blossomed into something great, but that was the infancy stages of it.
But how does that even happen? Is it common for NFL teams to scout at college basketball facilities?
I wouldn't say it's all that common. A lot of teams, I would say, try to kick the tires in and think outside the box and figure out ways that they could get other athletes to try to play this game and, kick in the tires and try to see if that works. I can't say that it's too common. We have a handful of basketball players that do play in the NFL, but it's not a lot. And they come every, maybe 5 years or so. So it's a mini fraternity within a fraternity, if you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, there's not many because the league's 53 players per team, 32 teams. So the number of basketball players in the league is I'm guessing 15, 20?
Not even. Maybe I'll probably say 5 at this point. It's not a large number because you might try to broaden the scope and try to invite guys in, but that doesn't mean they stick. So it's a lot of times they're more so developmental guys and low risk, high reward for these organizations, but a small percentage of them actually stick. So that's really what I mean when I say a fraternity within a fraternity.
So so to your point, you're one of the few that's made it stick. How did you find that? Like your muscle memory is attuned to basketball. That's your passion. You've achieved success. How do you find that transition to a completely different game that you haven't really been a fan of growing up?
I think there's a level of adaptability that comes with that. There's a level of cognitive capacity that comes with that, learning a whole new system, learning a playbook. There's a certain level of physicality that comes with that you kind of have to build that gristle, build that callousness that comes with playing the game of football. And to be honest with you, a lot of that hinges on, my God-given ability. But I put a combination of all of those things coupled with, finding the right coaching staff that believes in your talent, that's willing to, you know, pour into things and have the patience to see you blossom. I think a lot of it has to do with that, or had to do that with that in the beginning stages.
Right. So I hear you. Like you mentioned talent for sure, but I imagine that talent is there. That talent is a prerequisite, but that's not enough, right? It's about your attitude. It's about like your willingness and ability to quickly learn a playbook. So beyond talent, did you find yourself doubling down on any particular activities to quickly learn the game of football? And did you find that your coaches, like you mentioned, you need a good coaching support system, but did you find that they gave you longer to learn the game because you were coming in relatively cold versus other recruits?
I wouldn't say longer. I mean, the average career is already 3 years in here. So if you're coming in like a former basketball player like myself, you have to have a rather quick trajectory of improvement to encourage these coaches to kind of keep you around. And in a business where there's a constant revolving door of talent looking to replace you, you just kind of have to rely on a lot of the things that separate yourself from everybody else. Outworking everybody, paying attention to the details. And that's kind of what I pride myself on. The formula that's been working for quite some time. And even as a 12-year player, you kind of have to adopt that mentality, or else you're just going to get swallowed up by everybody that comes in here. So it's a constant reminder that you have to be in a state of constant improvement.
Yeah, absolutely. Because to your point, like there's always somebody vying for your position. Were there any particular details that you've picked up on that helped you have the staying power that you've had? Because to your point, not a league known for longevity or loyalty, and yet you've carved out a 12-year career across multiple teams. So there's clearly, I would think, something you're doing right. Part of it is the physicality and the God-given talent, sure, but there must be something that you're doing, choosing to do. Some insight you've uncovered that's allowed you to enjoy this longevity.
I think it really just comes down to the habits. Like as simple as that may sound, like your habits kind of shape your behavior, and the habits that you form, whether it be at a young age or even when you get to this level, oftentimes carries you when things get hard. So what are those habits? And for a 12-year vet like myself, priding yourself on doing more than everybody else, being the first one here, being the last to leave, and being productive with that time, right? Being structured with your schedule, being diligent about what you put in your body, being diligent about how you take care of your body outside of this building, and the home life, getting your rest, getting adequate sleep, managing and trying to disassociate what happens off the field versus what happens on the field, trying to compartmentalize all of that and balance it all. I think it's a combination of all of that that kind of contributes to, the long-term success of everything.
I hear you because, to your point, habits compound and then they can shape outcomes. Do you find that those who don't always make it in the NFL, like there's a lot of reasons, but do you find like lack of good habits is a contributing factor to a relatively short career in the league?
I think in part it's lack of good habits, and also in part of Just having the right mindset, especially when bad stuff happens, because inevitably those things are going to happen. How are you going to respond when you're a tight end in the league and the NFL draft comes up and they draft another tight end in the third round? Stuff like that can potentially break people, can potentially deter somebody from their initial plan and everything like that. So having kind of like the right mindset as far as being able to control the things you can, control the way you prepare, control your attitude when it comes to, certain adversity, if you will. I think those are one or many of the distinguishing qualities that kind of separates, the people that hang around for a long time versus the people that's just here for a little bit of time.
And what kind of adversity are we talking about? Are we talking about like getting cut from a team or being blamed for a loss? What would you say is the top adversity you've experienced in your career in the league?
I mean, at this point, I've seen a lot. Adversity could be by means of injury, right? Although sometimes not within your control of happening, but how do you respond to that? Adversity could be another example, like I just gave you, having somebody that's drafted or signed at your same position that's in high regard with the coaching staff. Do you allow that to happen? Do you just sit back and relax? Do you accept that that's just what it is? It really depends on your mindset. So there's so many different levels of adversity. Even having a new coaching staff change. A lot of people don't realize that when a new coaching staff comes in, it's almost as if being on a new team because you're getting reevaluated all over again. So rising up to that challenge can be a way to respond to that level of adversity, if you will. So there's so many different ways and things that you can navigate when it comes to this, but how you respond is really the most important.
And so how do you respond? A new coaching staff comes in or you're joining a new team. So you've got to learn a new playbook. Every coach has got their own way of doing things, run first, pass first, whatever that is. And I imagine these playbooks are pretty dense and there's a high level of expectation. And that's not to be rewarded. That's just for keeping your job, let alone progressing. So how do you deal with that when there's a new coaching staff that comes in and they have a lot of expectations? Maybe they want to tweak your diet. Like you've got to learn a new playbook. What's your approach?
My approach is honestly just really focusing on the things that I can control. In this game of football, in this world of the NFL, what you put on tape is essentially your resume. So when a new coaching staff comes in, they obviously might have some type of rapport with you or maybe asked on, you know, secondhand, what type of person you are, XYZ. But ultimately, they're going to put on that tape and you're going to be evaluated by what you've done previously. That's the best insight that they could get into the type of player that you are. So even when a coaching staff like last year got fired in the middle of the season, you can't throw the towel in because you know that whatever you put on tape, the next coaching staff is going to see, the next coaching staff is going to evaluate. And that's enough for me as a player to understand that you can't really take this stuff for granted. Like you always have to be in a constant state of improvement and trying to prove yourself. So that's kind of what carries it.
And on that note, do you find that your mindset and habits shift when you're having a really successful season versus a less successful season as the Giants experienced in 25?
It's kind of hard not to sometimes, but you kind of have to fall back on just trying to be just steady, not getting too high, not getting too low, not getting what we would call emotionally hijacked by the situation, just relying on your process. That should never change. That should never change regardless of who's in charge, regardless of where you are on the depth chart. Does that mean that you can't reevaluate your process and improve it? You could always try to do that. But once you have something that works, have a system that works for you, that you have to rely on that process.
Within that process, is there anything like that gives you a real high? Is it game day? Is it practice? Is it media? Like everyone's got different things. I imagine it's not talking media. I imagine the biggest thrill is getting to the end zone. But is there something that when you're going through this process you really look forward to? Like I've got all these ducks in a row and that makes me more confident I'm going to hit X goal.
I think a lot of the confidence comes from, I guess, your ability to demonstrate, success or good things over and over. And that's what really drives the process. Like, it's really the routine that you get in love with. Like, waking up early, studying when you get home, studying early when you get here, you know, taking care of your body, soft tissue treatment, infrared treatment, hyperbaric chamber treatment, all the things that goes into ensuring that you give yourself the best chance of success on Sunday. That's my high. That's what keeps me kind of, going. And I love to be able to work towards being good or being great at something. So you see the results, it's even more motivation to continue that process and try to excel.
I love that because I think Kobe Bryant said words to the same effect, where whatever your job is, even if janitor, athlete, president, whatever that is, you have to love the process, not just the outcomes. You're going to have bad days. We all do. But you have to love the bad days because it gives you something to learn from and then maybe tweak your process and just keep at it, keep at it. And therefore you don't like, then it doesn't become such a grind, right? Because every job has some aspect which isn't so fun. But within that, what would you say is the most fun aspect of your role and the least fun?
The most fun aspect of my job is it has to be suiting up on Sunday in front of 60,000 plus people and getting that adrenaline rush before the game, the little butterflies before the game. And then after the first drive, the butterflies just goes away and it's just ball. The crowd isn't there. Nobody's there. It's just you and the person in front of you. Those type of things kind of just are the things that you remember on game day. So it makes it really fun and something to look forward to. On the less fun side, I would probably say balancing it all. I think being able to compartmentalize, like I said earlier, balancing whether it's business off the field, whether it's family, whether it's wife, whether it's kids, whether it's taking care of you, your mental health, whether it's being in a high performance, production driven business like this, you have to be on your P's and Q's and be able to perform at a high level. So I'd like to say just balancing all of that is something that's, obviously a work in progress, but it's always a juggling act. The ones that handle that the best tend to have, the most success in my opinion.
I feel like it's easy to say, oh, why he makes it look easy. Well, he makes it look easy because he put the work in when you want, right? Nothing actually comes that easy. You've been around a really long time in terms of 12-year career, but also Giants, Broncos, Panthers. Is there a story you like to tell at parties pertaining to this journey you've been on within the NFL?
Relating to what? You got to narrow it down for me because I got a lot of stories.
I think that's like, wow, did that just happen? Because it, if I told somebody the story, they wouldn't believe me, but it really just happened.
Wow. There's a lot. I'd probably say it's always fun during training camp because that's usually the hardest time of the year. It's the hottest time of the year. It's the most high stakes part of the year. You have 90 guys competing for 53 spots. It's hot. You're tired. You're sore. Nobody cares, right? Frustration is high sometimes, and that might come at the expense of, scuffles breaking out in practice, those type of things. It's always entertaining sometimes to see that because as somebody that's been in the league as long as I have, it's funny. I don't have the time for that anymore. Usually, a fight breaks out in practice and everybody comes. It's like the baseball fight. Everybody just runs out and I'm kind of the guy at this point in my career that I'm just like, guys, you can have at it. Just like I'm trying to conserve my energy. But that's one of the funnier things. Like that's one of the stories that I could think of that's just like, it always happens, but it's funny to me because you go from the guy that's, in the middle of that. Now you're the guy that's trying to conserve his energy.
So you can reapply that energy when it really matters.
Exactly.
What's it like when there's a fumble and there's a mad scramble for the ball? Do you find that the guy who really landed on the ball, people are still trying to poke it away from him before the refs see? I've heard stories that, like, there's all sorts of people like pinching each other's butts and all, trying to like dislodge because until the officials point in one direction, it's up for grabs. Or is that not a common story where people like pinching
I
each
mean,
other?
being under that dog pile, there's a lot that goes on in there. I've been a part of guys like poking, punching, like just trying to take the ball last minute. And ultimately, sometimes it gets kind of lost in there because the refs don't see that. The ref only sees it towards the end, and then the refs make a decision based on what they see. So, yeah, there's a lot of things going on under that scrum.
Is there any trash talk? Because I know it's a different sport, but Muhammad Ali's Rumble in the Jungle, he won through athleticism, but he also won through strategy of absorbing those blows for however many rounds. But I think he also won because he was in George Foreman's ear, winding him up, insulting him. George, my sister hits harder than you, and really taunting him. Is that a part of your game?
It's not a part of my game. I'm the guy that lets my game do the talking. If somebody pokes the bear enough, the bear will poke back. But I wouldn't say that I'm the trash talking type.
Do you feel comfortable naming a trash talker on your team?
But there's quite a few. Our linebackers, Bobby Okereke. Sometimes the quarterbacks might talk trash. There's a handful of guys that really, once things start going and they get in that flow state, it doesn't matter. All bets are off. But it's good. That's what makes this game fun.
Within that, is there an insult or some kind of trash talk that stood out to you and that stood the test of time and you've remembered it?
I'm gonna be honest with you, Ali. Like when I'm out there, I be in my own world.
If you're enjoying the story of Chris's transition from basketball to football, you'll probably also enjoy hearing the riveting story of Lady Suzanne Hayward. She spent most of her childhood sailing around the world with her family against her wishes. You can read about it in her best-selling memoir, Wave Walker, a gripping story that will move and inspire you. Available now wherever you buy books. Now, you've carved out a role in the league, 12 years in, as a tight end, but you're more of a blocker than a receiver. And there's less kind of robust stats on blocking than there is receiving. So how do you grade your own performance?
My performance is graded on me pretty much blocking the guy in front of me and ensuring that he doesn't make a play on the ball. In a perfect world, if all 11 guys do that, or if all 10 guys do that, should be a touchdown every time, right? No defensive player should peel off and make a tackle. So a lot of my performance is based on being able to execute at that level.
Is that another way of saying that sacks is of the quarterback you're defending is kind of a metric that is used to evaluate tight end performance?
For sure, especially if you're asked to block defensive end one-on-one. If you get beat, you get beat. Everybody's going to know it too. So,
But you're not that guy, right? Where the line of scrimmage, when you're like 2 feet away from this other guy who's like trash talking, because you sound like you want your game to do the talking. Are you trying to gain any advantage verbally or through any other means before this guy you're trying to block comes charging at you?
not verbally, physically, I try to get his hands on me before he gets my. It's the battle of the first touch.
So speed to go from the 3-point position to upright, you got to nail that, and everything flows from that state.
Yes, coupled with good footwork, a good blocking target, and a good landmark based on the play that you're trying to execute as an offense. So there's many different nuances that comes to blocking angles and ensuring that you're blocking the guy correctly based on the scheme that's being called.
And how do you feel about being primarily a blocking tight end? Do you wish that the coaches could dial up a few more receptions for you?
No, I mean, my biggest thing at the beginning of this was doing whatever was necessary to see the field. And usually when you're on the field, the greater your odds for anything to happen as far as getting a ball thrown your way or whatever. So my biggest value is understanding that I know where my strength is. I know what I'm being asked to do. And ultimately, it's my job to execute that job at the highest level that I can so I could build trust from the coaches.
Right. But when you do get into the end zone, because although you're primarily blocking tight end, you've been in the end zone a few times. What's that feeling like? Is it a real thrill?
It's euphoric. Scoring a touchdown, getting 6 points for your team. If you're at a home game, the whole crowd is just going crazy. It's fun. It's a rush, and that's what you work for. You don't get many of those, right? It's hard to score in this league to begin with. So when you're, a big contributor of that, like it's always refreshing and it's always fun.
Switching gears a little bit, like you're a player in the league, and the league is, from a business point of view, the gigantic force of nature. It's been able to export its product overseas to markets which aren't predisposed to American football. They have their own sports, their own traditions, their own fan bases for, if it's Real Madrid or if it's Corinthians in Brazil or here in London. How do players view the league? Is there a kind of respect or an antagonistic relationship? Because, every few years you're negotiating the CBA. How do players typically think of team owners, but also league management?
Well, you have a bucket of guys that, like the union guys like myself, the union reps like myself, that have maybe a better insight on the business aspect between our union and the NFL and what goes into those negotiations. And then you have the other guys that's not really privy to all of that or interested in all of that. They're just interested in getting the money, which is fine. Like this is all business that is driven by money, but it's also good to understand the business side and how the league and the union comes to certain conclusions, whether it's, you know, labor environment, bylaws within, you know, how we're supposed to work, hours, things like that, like true, like union stuff, benefits, pension plans, things like that. So there's a lot of things that goes into that, but there's two buckets of people. And usually the older you get in the league, the more you start caring about that stuff. And so that's kind of the dynamic and how it goes.
I find the league's dynamic into like amazing business, even if you're not a football fan, like as a business spectacle is incredible, especially with the Super Bowl where it's like 10 minutes of action and a 5-hour broadcast. It's mostly ads talking and promoting the halftime show and then a halftime show. I also find trophy presentations in American sports, especially the Super Bowl, to be so underwhelming because, so in the NFL, you've got 53 guys going at it for weeks and weeks, beating each other up. At the end of the season, it's usually some old white dude lifting the Lombardi. I'm thinking, like, buddy, I know you signed the checks, but you didn't actually do anything. Whereas versus here in Europe, the guys lifting the trophy, the guys on the field giving their blood, sweat, and tears. And to me, it's a kind of an indication where in the US, capitalism is king, so the guy being rewarded is the capital. And here in Europe, it's a bit more labor oriented, and so labor's lifting the trophy. And so it always strikes me as just odd that some old billionaires lifting the trophy. Is that a commonly held view amongst the players, or are you just like this is just how it's done?
You kind of grow accustomed to how it's done, but I've noticed that early on too, right? Usually, or it should be, the first people, if anything, are who's getting the trophy is a player or MVP or a featured, whatever it might be. But I do also understand that the NFL is probably one of the best businesses ever for ownership. Growth year over year, amazing. You're in a business that churns $20+ billion a year and it grows every year, right? And piece of that pie is split among the players and the owners. So understanding that component, I would prefer as a player advocate for a player to get it first, get handed the trophy, because we're the only ones out there, blood, sweat, and tears in training camp, away from our families during the season, putting really the work in to get that. But on another viewpoint, this is their baby. These are all 32 teams. This is just their little baby. And this is one piece of their portfolio as well.
I think that's the point. Okay, so it's one piece of their portfolio versus 53 guys putting their life and limb on the line. Right? Those are two different things. So as a fan, I would like to ask you at the next negotiation, the league doesn't get the 18th regular season game until the players lift the trophy.
Now, we might need a little more than that in exchange for an 18th game.
But sure, we definitely need more than that. But that's got to be part. Like we need 72 team roster, whatever it is. But that's we've got to negotiate that part.
Yeah, we got to throw that in at the end once everything is all buttoned up. And oh, by the way, let's get handed the trophy.
Yeah, you're a details guy. You can throw that in there. Did you ever watch Ballers on HBO? Did you find that was accurate?
Very accurate. I'm not a guy that watches TV or shows much, but I think I was on a long flight and they had it on the one of the United flights, and I watched one episode and I couldn't stop. I'm like, this is like a microcosm of what I've been witnessing. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I loved it. I'm not pro athlete, but I found do you see the last season?
I think so, yeah. I don't know how many seasons there are, but
the last season was when The Rock's character, Spencer Strassmore, becomes a part owner. And I'm like, you went from former player to financial advisor to part owner, which I found a bit fanciful because I believe ownership of an NFL, that player to ownership pathway, I believe is just Tom Brady. And the ownership that does exist, for example, JJ Watt, it's owning soccer teams in Europe, not the NFL. And in the NBA, I think it's only Michael Jordan who's an owner of a team. So although NFL players are handsomely paid, that pathway to ownership still appears to be narrow, but I imagine it's an aspirational path, given the riches of the league. That, as in, players would like to have a part ownership of the team going forwards, but it doesn't seem like we're talking. You get paid millions, but these teams are worth billions, so it doesn't seem like there's a path there. Is that fair?
I mean, I would trade my salary in exchange for a piece of a team or a piece of the team that I play for. Like, it's a very, very special club. And it's emerging now, but like owning a sports team, owning a team in the NFL is probably like one of the best performing asset classes of all time. Honestly, it's a special club to get in, and you kind of have to check all the boxes. You get voted in as an owner. You have to be financially ready to take on that. And sometimes, you don't know when these liquidity events will happen. Seahawks are going for sale. They announce it. But whoever wants to participate in that has to be ready financially. That's one. Two, they got to be voted in. So there's so many barriers to entry. Tom Brady, thankfully, was one of the lucky ones, but I'm sure a lot of players or former players would feel the same way.
Well, we can rob a bank if we need to. No, we should not do that.
Ah.
Not advocating robbing banks. But we talked a lot about your professional football career, but I know that something that's close to your heart is giving back to the community, particularly the Bronx community where you grew up. How's that been going? Because you've been doing summer camps for a number of years with high school kids.
Yeah.
How's that program grown over the years, and what have you learned from it?
I've learned how fulfilling it is to honestly give back, especially in my hometown. I've learned how much local businesses would be willing to support and or sponsor and lift that up to help you amplify that as much as possible. Oftentimes, I've kind of underestimated the value of just having this platform and being able to reach so many people. So that's been kind of cool to witness. This will be my 4th year running my football clinic and open it to girls as well, especially with the emergence of ladies flag footballs and things like that. So it's a way to bring everybody together. And you want everybody, all the kids, to leave with tangible, advice and skills that they could leave with so that they could, apply. So that's been pretty cool and probably been one of the better things, like as far as like I've been able to be a part of just being in this league. So it's been pretty cool.
And I imagine even after your playing days are done, you'll be able to continue that program.
Absolutely.
And as you're a 12-year vet, it's not controversial to say you're probably closer to the end of your playing career than the beginning. Do you have a sense of what you want your post-playing days to look like?
I have an idea. I know what I like. I love business and I love sports. So in my perfect world, I'll stay in that sector, whether it's in media or working for a club, front office stuff. Like those type of things, like really draw my interest, and I think it fits my skill sets very well. So don't know fully what that would look like, but that's kind of where I want to go with it.
Yeah. So not to the no to the Justin Tuck path.
I wouldn't say no to that. He's great. Uh, I've spoken to him several times and picked his brain, and he's the epitome of a guy that did it right too. So I wouldn't close the door on that either.
Yeah, and in case listeners are unfamiliar, Justin Tuck won, I believe, 2 championships with the Giants in '08 and '12, then went to the University of Pennsylvania Wharton School of Business, and then worked in sales for Goldman Sachs. One thing that is probably very comforting for you as an athlete is that so many industries are set to be disrupted by AI, but I don't see us watching robots throw pigskins on a Sunday afternoon. So it looks like, NFL players are not going to be too disrupted by AI. But at the same time, like this technology and, no profession stays the same, right? There's always change. Do you have a sense of what changes through technology or otherwise that may impact the tight end position 5 years from now?
The football world, I mean, a whole lot, especially from a data and an analytics standpoint. I use AI to help break down my notes for me learning this new playbook. I use Notebook LM, I use Claude, I use ChatGPT, all different use cases for what I need, whether it's for scheduling, whether it's to optimize my recovery, whether it's to help me break down tendencies of opponents that I'm scouting through my notes. I feel like the world is kind of unlimited when it comes to the capabilities of all those things. So kind of cool.
Have you found that there's been a benefit to your play on Sunday because you're using AI to prepare, like learn about an opponent in a more efficient, insightful way than before Claude became a thing?
I think so. I think so. I think it cuts out a lot of time, whether it's analyzing data, because a whole lot of our scouting reports is just built on data and just analytics and tendencies of guys. So if you could kind of condense that and shorten the time as far as you accumulating that information, I think it's helpful.
Do you find that because you've gained time, because you've become more efficient, like, do you have a sense of like, I've freed up my time with this, I'm going to do that instead, or is that pattern not yet emerged?
No, that definitely so. Now you have more time to focus on other things, whether it's your recovery or whether it's getting rest, right? You're cutting out time from somewhere else. Maybe that could add to you getting rest so that you could perform at a level that you need to on Sunday. So I think it's helpful.
And with that saved time, maybe you can get some reps in to start your NBA career that didn't take off when you were 22.
Absolutely.
Dear Adam Silver. All right, last question. This has been really fun. I'm running out of time. So last question. You've achieved a lot of success in college ball and in the NFL, on career, across multiple teams, different conferences. As you think about the entire arc of your career across football, basketball, and even some of the philanthropy work you do, what would you say the moral of the story is?
I think the moral of the story, that's a great question. I think the moral of the story is two things: remain adaptable and remain open minded. The open minded part comes from, a kid that did not have football on the radar getting pitched an opportunity to work out for an NFL club. The closed minded guy would have been like, I've never played football a day in my life. Why am I going to even try this? I've already built up enough cachet in playing basketball to pursue a professional career overseas. Why would I switch now? Open minded guy says, what do I have to lose? And as far as the adaptability piece, I think that's a that's something that never ends. You're constantly redefining yourself. You're constantly reevaluating yourself. My mindset when I was a rookie in the NFL versus my mindset as a 12-year vet, it's changed a little bit. The needs are different. I have a family now. My body might take a minute to get revved up. So that might require me to take extra care of my body and invest more in my body. So you always have to remain adaptable, remain malleable, and being ready to, whatever comes up, just being ready to take it on. So in short, that's the moral of the story.
I love that, and that's never come up before. So thank you for that. And we need some of that bit more open-mindedness in Europe. I miss that about the US. Well, Chris, this has been really rich and insightful. Thank you so much for taking the time and talking to us today.
Appreciate your time.